Hi, my name is Daniel Hall, and I'm assistant professor at TU Delft in the Netherlands. And I'm here to present my work along with my colleague, Dr. Bononomi, about governing collaborative project delivery as a common pool resource scenario. As we look at collaborative project delivery models, we find that there are three distinct differences between these projects and traditional project delivery models. The first one is that multi-party contracts are shared and created with a financial pool shared among all of the different parties. You look at some examples from integrated project delivery or IPD based in North America, and we see many references to pools like common pools, profit pools, and incentive pools. The second is that the project decision rights are shared over the entire team and all have a say over the project direction. We call it collective decision-making. And even the project sponsor or owner gives up some of their decision-making autonomy and shares it among the collective team. And finally, there's a shared risk and reward of project outcomes where you create a risk and reward boundary. You define the firms that are within that pool. And then you also look at those that are outside the pool, but those within the boundaries of the shared risk and reward share in the gain and the pain of the project. Now, this is all well and good, but we have a problem, I feel, in collaborative project delivery model literature, in that we have an overemphasis on these shared practices and mechanisms. When you read papers, there's often the same references to theory of relational contracting and limiting transaction costs, and then some specific examples of the practices. So you use a big room in the co-location, or you have a shared risk and reward contract with specific examples of the types of contracts that are used. This is all well and good, but I find there's a lack of overall alternative theories or high-level conceptualizations of what exactly the governance mechanisms are meant to do. What are we trying to achieve? And so in this work, we really like to reframe and rethink about the holistic view of collaborative project delivery, and we think of it as a common pool resource scenario. And I'm going to dive into that in the rest of this presentation. What is a common pool resource scenario? Many of us may be familiar with what's referred to as the tragedy of the commons. In this situation, you have, for example, a pasture that's open to all the different herders that live on the mountain. They receive a benefit for their own animals grazing. And if they're rationally acting, they're going to be incentivized to add more and more animals, but the overall resource system might suffer. Similarly, we suggest there could be a similar tragedy of the project in a collaborative project delivery model setting. The budget and schedule become open to all. All signatory parties have a contractual right to withdraw resources as they use them. And if they are rationally acting, they might over-allocate resources to their own project teams to the detriment of the overall collaborative project. And then this results in a downward spiral of project resources, or a tragedy of the project. But we haven't seen that very often in collaborative projects like integrated project delivery. In fact, we see a lot of examples of success. So what's really going on here? Well, fortunately, we know that in common pool resource scenarios, there are design principles for the governance mechanisms in which align local actors for long-term and long-enduring governance of the commons. And here's an example from Elinor Ostrom, who is a Nobel Prize-winning economist, who had outlined several design principles, and we will go through some examples in a moment. Here's one, the idea of designing the boundaries of the common pool resource scenario, which must be well designed according to Ostrom's principles. And in IPD practice, we have an example of the validation study where the project sponsor and the project team are going to sit down early in the project and define the aspects of the project scope and the budget that are shared. We wanted to move just from a conceptual level to looking at how this occurs in practice. So we conducted some field work to observe if we could see these common pool resource design principles in action. And Marcella spent several months at the East Vancouver Integrated Health and Social Housing Project, one of the first IPD projects in Canada that used a public client. And she conducted 81 hours of observations and 12 semi-structured interviews. And here's just one example of what she saw, Ostrom's design principle of monitoring, where there must be monitors that are present and actively auditing the resource conditions of the common pool. And these monitors must furthermore either be the users themselves or must be accountable directly to the users. In the IPD project, we observed how in weekly big room meetings, the project teams would report out to their entire IPD team using a 2-week planning board, promising the work that they would do. And then each week they would review their performance by calculating and reporting out to the team with a metric called plan % complete, which you could look at as a monitoring metric to see how reliable is the project team being. Again, this is a way of monitoring the resources of the project and making sure that commitments are being completed. So what does this mean for future project managers? First, we believe that this allows project managers to be theoretically informed of what they're trying to achieve. They're not conducting a validation study because the IPD consultant said so. They're actually drawing and creating the boundaries of the resource pool that they can effectively then later manage. And second, it can inform the design of future practices. So we can think about how would we design beyond the current practices that are used in IPD. And for example, we've begun to think about how could we deliver projects using crypto economics and blockchain technologies. So in doing so, we could think about Ostrom's principle of graduated sanctions, the idea that those that are violating the operational rules could be assessed a small but gradually increasing sanction. And in doing so, we've designed or begun to think about a transparent and token-based sanctioning approach for repeated deviant behavior. This is just one small example, but the theory allows us to inform and design the specific future practices that we want to see in the future of project management. Thank you very much for your time. The 3 papers that I referred to are here. The first one is the main paper, which has the conceptual setup, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Feel free to reach out to me by email or on Twitter. Thank you very much. Goodbye.